Hi, we're Option Conservation, and this is the Shoot Room Sessions. Fee, welcome back to the Shoot Room.
Thank you.
Your second part. A lot has happened since we last had you here. We have produced and shared the most incredible portfolio on property strategy, which somewhere in the region of 20,000 words, 80 pages, all distilled down into 12 core principles.
Yeah. Good job that we did that. When you say it like that, it makes it sound long.
It was an incredible piece of work. And what, for those of you watching, you did that in the first 98 days you were part of Option Conservation. Yeah. You've got to feel proud of that.
Yeah, really proud. And it was a really good way of getting to know the portfolio. It's brilliant.
Okay. So can you tell us some facts and figures about the portfolio that you found during that work?
Yeah, in less than 20,000 words.
19.
Okay, so for anybody who isn't familiar with the portfolio, we have currently got 10 sites across 3 nations. So we've got 3 sites in Scotland, 1 in West Wales, and the rest in England, principally in the southwest. 8 of those have got property assets, and that gives us something like 118 buildings and over 250,000 square feet of floor space. So actually quite a big property footprint, which is everything from traditional stone barns to big agricultural sheds, 2-bed cottages to 7-bed listed farmhouses and everything in between. So huge range.
Shepherds, huts, yurts, tents, everything, right?
Yeah. So it's very, very diverse and very exciting.
Any surprising things that you found about the portfolio when you thought, when that presented itself, we've got one of those? Wow. Okay.
I mean, lots of things. I think, every opportunity to go to site, threw up something new, and we spoke about that a little bit on the last podcast. But I think then when we went back to crunching the numbers to present it in the strategy, it was how many households were supporting to live across the estate. So we've got something like 36 properties that could be in residential or ecotourism use. 20 of those at the moment have got families living in them, which means there's, nigh on 60 people living across 8 estates, which is
incredible. And we're a team of 20 people. Yeah. So 3 times the amount of people living on the estates that we're looking after, which is super cool. So you broke down 12 key principles across 3 areas. So environmental, social and economic. Mm-hmm. So I thought we'd dive into some of those. So I've noted down some of the key ones. I'm going to read those out and ask you questions about them, okay?
Okay.
So we'll start with environment, because we're OCing, of course. So we think and believe built properties are an intrinsic feature of landscape level projects. Mm-hmm. Their integration allows us to find incredible natural capital opportunities that aren't available to others. Yeah. What does that mean? Why is it so important to us to have a built property component?
Mm-hmm. I mean, lots of reasons. And I suppose, the start of your question is, why can we do that? And I think it's because we're fundamentally comfortable with a property element. Lots of organisations don't want to take that on. I think we recognise that often that's sort of integral to the estate, to the functioning of it, to its history, and also because it supports the value of the estates. We estimate that somewhere between 1/4 and 1/5 of the value of the portfolio is in built assets. And my role is to think about how we can really support the investment that we've made and get those spaces, back into productive use and to deliver, economic and social impact alongside the environmental stuff that we're doing on site.
Yeah, when reading it, it was really interesting because one of the key principles from an environmental perspective is the value of scale and connecting landscapes. Mm-hmm. And I think every time one of these landscapes is broken up and parts are taken away, you're inherently making those connections for wildlife and nature harder because they're working across border and across ownership. So I think keeping those estates together, the built and the natural environmental part of it, are so important for connectivity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for for the history of the state and for the operations that we're running from them.
Yeah. And what about the management of a site? So one of the other key points was belief that it's fundamental for the effective management and enjoyment of an estate to have a big property component. Yeah. Can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, and ours are different across each. But by way of example, we've got properties that are providing site offices, places and spaces for meetings, for, site operational activities, for community consultation. And if we didn't have built property on site, we'd be doing those away, from the heart of
That's
the
the key word, right? We'd be away.
We're bringing people in, and we're saying we're here, we're operating from here, and we're, welcoming people into the landscape, I think.
So important. One of the initial questions we asked when we started OC is, should we be targeting land without that built property component? And whenever we looked at it, accessing it, understanding it, connecting with it was so difficult without a property. I mean, we're sat in the awesome shoot room at Mornicott now, which is a really great example of, we weren't going to host shoots, but nor did we know we were going to have a podcast until the building offered itself. And that's so exciting about the portfolio, that each of the different buildings have had chapters and uses of life, and they're already offering new ones. Yeah,
and I think we're in a really exploratory stage with that. We, and we'll probably talk about it later, but we've got lots of buildings that now need a new lease of life. And in the same way that we've been taking our time understanding the kind of environmental baseline, we're doing the same. We're letting the property settle, and we're looking at what's happening around, and how we take that forward.
The connectivity bit's really important as well, I think. So when we bring people to an estate, the ability to spend time together, eat together, stay on the estate, it really makes you feel connected in the ownership part of it. And certainly for our investors, I know that's been really important to them, especially in Invergeld and Mornicott, where we spend so much time, because again, we've got open properties that can be enjoyed in terms.
And we've brought a huge number of people onto Shropham and Mornicott in particular because of the ecotourism. We ran the numbers, and we've had over 800 visitors to those two estates this year, and the capacity of that is greater. So it's very much not about, we're buying an estate and then we put our arms around it. We want people to share in that, I suppose.
Why is that important to us? Why? So we often get asked, and we recorded a podcast recently with Elle, our head of storytelling, talking about how we want to be transparent and open. We often get asked, wouldn't it just be easy to lock the gates and keep people out? And you're a private company, why do you need to invite people in at all? What's our answer to that?
Well, I think our answer is that we're all about education, aren't we? Do you know what I mean? We want to show that you can do this in a holistic way, and that, natural processes doesn't mean taking people off the land. The property assets that we've got are central to the estates generally, and that's because they had a functional purpose of, the people who were working on the land and in that landscape needed to be there and needed to see it. So I just, I think the integrity piece about the function of that is really important.
That's actually a point that did come through in your strategy, but I hadn't quite expressed it mentally in my head that way before. That if you don't have a built component, you are essentially saying there's no space for people, which, we're trying to do the exact opposite, wildlife and people. That's really cool. So we talked about ecotourism. Do you think that's going to be a feature across the oxygen conservation portfolio?
Yeah, I think it will be. I think it works really well with what we want to do aligned with the land strategies. And the assets that we have effectively acquired at Shropham and Mornicott, the infrastructure had been put in by the previous owners, but we are delighted to kind of carry on the legacy of what they started, because I think it's exactly, they've started that in a way that we...
Same way we would.
Yeah.
Quality and a commitment.
Yeah, and I think they create a brilliant precedent to say, actually, this is what can be achieved sensitively. Mornicott, if you want to do conversions, Shropham, if you want to do, different interesting types of accommodation, something more innovative. And I think you could take any of the stakeholders out there, local council, and say, can we do more of this? And they would see.
I mean, we literally have guests throughout most of November and December coming to visit us at Mornicott especially. We're really fortunate to have Charles, the estate manager at Mornicott, in the room. So great job for building this place, Charles. Thank you. That's another really exciting thing about the ecotourism bit. So at both Mornicott and Shropham, we've been really fortunate to keep the person that was a key architect for those businesses. Yeah. And it comes back to same way as wanting property to bring people into a state. We want to create employment in the local economy.
Yeah.
Well, ecotourism is a key way to drive that forward.
Yeah.
When we're thinking about ecotourism, what do we want it to look and feel like? What we're going to launch the Oxygen Escapes website next year, which is super, super exciting. Yeah. Elle's in the room as well. So what is that going to look and feel like? I know we're playing around with those ideas at the moment, but give people some ideas of what they can expect.
I think they can expect something very considered. I think anything that we put up by way of permanent structure, anything that we convert or anything that we construct, we want it to be part of an OC legacy. It's not there to, be kind of flashy and this is what we're after and then we're going to move on.
Elegant, pared back.
Yeah, and to be the kind of next the next iteration of the estate's development. And Monaco is perfect for that. You see that. And then, I guess just careful consideration around the choices we make in terms of, furnishing, products, all of those things, kind of tying back to an ethos of sustainability, local sourcing, local suppliers.
So working with you on this is Katie, our ecotourism manager, which we're incredibly lucky to have, because the attention to detail, the experience of running incredibly high-end visitor experiences and attractions just mean everything she touches will be perfect.
Yeah, I think an experience is exactly the word, isn't it? There's been rightly a proliferation of people wanting to visit natural spaces, particularly post-COVID. And I think if we can really plan that into the wider strategies that we've got for property, but particularly land, the opportunities that opens up for them to experience the change in that landscape and the accessibility that we can offer that wouldn't ordinarily be there.
Yeah. So one of our founders, Mark, is his philosophy and belief on the ecotourism side is every high-end quality opportunity we can offer in the UK has the potential to take a family out of a plane that would be having a huge environmental impact to go to Europe. And I think COVID was awful for lots of people and they experienced terrible things and people lost loved ones. A glimmer of positivity I felt that came out of COVID was a reconnection for people with their environment here in the UK, because we were taken away from us. And, until something is taken from you, you don't realise how much you appreciate it and love it. And we've certainly seen that with people's connection with the environment. So I'm really excited that we can offer hundreds and thousands of people next year the opportunity to visit those estates. And the beautiful thing about Monaco and Stropham so far is they're structured in such a way that we can welcome visitors to the heart of the estate without damaging the precious environments because of how it's put together.
Yeah, and that siting is so important, how we get infrastructure to them, what we offer, and how much connection do people then want with us or with the land while we're here. I'm going to put Charles on the spot, but I know that he's been known to take people out on a wildlife safari. Who doesn't want to do that when they're in Devon?
We've got him booked out, but you can check out Oxygen Escapes and book in to see Charles next year. So excited about the next stages of ecotourism, both for the estates we've got and for the extending ecotourism opportunities across the place. So obviously we've got the partnership with Camp Wilder, and which allows people to get out into really special parts of the environment where there aren't structures already. But I know across the portfolio we're looking at new additions moving forward.
Yeah. On a very bespoke basis, what's right in that landscape, what's the impact of that.
One of the other key points was working as local as possible with some of these things as well. So there's a shout out as well. If check out the Oxygen Conservation portfolio. If you live and work and you're a skilled tradesperson or designer who wants to help with developing ecotourism, we really want to hear from you. So please get in touch at hello@oxygenconservation.com and let us know what you can do to help. Okay, I'm going to take a brief pause there and then we're going to come back and talk about economic impacts.
Sure.
Welcome back, Fee.
Thank you.
So second stage of our priorities, economic impacts. So one of the principles that was put forward was built properties preserve capital value in the portfolio and they have a multiplier effect on the potential resale of land. So my interpretation of that, if I'm correct, is that we think that principal residence means the future buyers of the estate, there's going to be more of those. It's got a future, better future resale potential. Is my interpretation correct?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just about the integrity of that asset. We look at a lot of comparables in the market, and I think the estates that we've bought are rare in a way. We see a lot of land of varying sizes and types come forward, and we see some properties come forward, and I think the opportunity to have both is a real asset. Partly because this idea that the principal house the farm cottages, whatever it might be, was the beating heart of the estate.
Yeah.
And actually, once that's gone, it's gone. And I would say this with a property hat on, but it's a bit like selling off the crown jewels. So actually, if we don't need to do that, and the control that gives us then in terms of the things that happen on the estates, the uses that take place, I think is really valuable. From a, sort of planning perspective, I think we see more and more talk about, the pressure on housing market and rural housing market, particularly coming from things like second homes and from Airbnbs. Once we've let those properties go, what they become, we've got no control of. If we're responsible for the management of them, we can guide them.
I think that's an important point, that we do not live or reside in any of the estates on any of the properties on auction and conservation estates. They're either used for local residents from a residential perspective or ecotourism to encourage more people to visit the landscapes we've got and to provide a revenue stream to help support the conservation activities. I think when we think about the prominence of a built property on a large estate, I think about who the next generation of buyers are. And if we fast forward 10, 20 years, because we want to do significant conservation work, we want to plant new trees and restore peatland and develop these estates. So that's a long-term hold anyway.
Yeah.
I think the next generation that are buying estates, they're not buying them for shooting follies and things like that. But if our direction of travel is anything like societies as a company, we want more space for nature and wildlife. And these are going to be houses and properties, and hopefully through your work, even more properties in uber special environments. So more people are going to want to live there. And in terms of finding those buyers, the people who, or the investors who can pick up large estates, are going to want both.
Yeah, and anything that we do in those landscapes is going to enhance the environments around those properties and make them even more special than they already are. And you're going to have whoever is, living there as a tenant or is working there or is visiting there is going to have access to that, and potentially over a long period of time and see how it changes as we do. So
you mentioned the development potential for sites. And so I don't come from a development background, but I've always had the belief that a built footprint of some kind, however redundant, will help from a planning and a future development perspective. Is that the case?
I think it must be, and we've touched on it previously, that generally there is a presumption against new isolated development, particularly in England, but across the UK, because the countryside should be protected for its intrinsic value. So, what we've got is 250,000 square foot of existing development. It's there, it's had viable use, it's sitting prominent in the landscape, it's there to be reutilised.
It's certainly not brownfield,
be improved,
but it's not green either. It's kind of
and there's such a variety. But in locations where we're not in a protected landscape, we've got the potential to think about conversion through permitted development rights, Class Q and other things, and that's there because they recognise that there is a building that can be adapted in that location. It can support rural housing, it can support commercial development.
I mean, we see it every time we bring a property forward for rental. I mean, huge response very quickly, because in each of the rural communities where we're fortunate enough to manage land, people want to live and there's that demand for housing. So
absolutely.
And if we want to see thriving rural communities, we have to help the next generation have a place in those communities, because if not, you've got no choice but to leave. I always remember when we were up at B&H at a welcoming event, the amazing members of the local community council came up to me and said, I've lost one child to Australia because they didn't see a future here and there was no property for them. I'm hoping the stimulus you guys bring mean there's jobs and opportunities for the family moving forward. So I hope so too.
I
hope we can really help with that.
And some of our tenants have been in those properties for generations. They are their homes, their family homes, and they live and love those landscapes as much and as more than we do, probably. So it's right that they're able to live in them, regardless of the change in ownership.
Agreed. So not just about residential, so we've got properties that will lend themselves to tons of uses. Do you think there's scope for utilisation of our buildings we've got in different ways?
Yeah, I think there is, and I think the opportunities are different on all the estates depending on the type of the building, the location, the surrounding context. But to put it in context, we've probably got about 66 agricultural buildings of different types that are increasingly underutilized. We're still using them for site operational things, for storage, but actually, we could probably rationalize that, and there would be a proportion of those, that could be converted, to a new use
So
quite rapidly, planning permitting.
Yeah. So I'm about to break the fourth wall and talk about an idea probably earlier than I should. So we've been toying with the idea of an oxygen conservation rural accelerator program where we're not yet in a position to offer funding and capital to new rural businesses. I hope we are at some point. But what we can offer is opportunities. So we've got the spaces you talked about. We've got land that can be accessed. So I think early in 2024, all being well, if we can make it work, we're going to bring forward this program and say, if you are a person living and working in a rural economy nearby one of our estates, and you think a building or some access to space would help you start a new rural business, get in touch and talk to us about what that might look like. Because my view on rural businesses is they're about the person. If there's someone who's a real champion for it and can believe it and live it the same way that our estate managers do, like Lyle in Esgarath and Tara up at Invergeldy and Charles here and Mel in Shropshire. If we have those people who are such champions of the landscape, they can do some really special things with businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, when you told me about that last week, I just thought it was one of the most exciting,
we need to find out how to do it now, right?
Yeah, but I'm
watch this space.
We'll make it happen.
Yeah. Okay. So talking about things from a social impact perspective now. So committed to creating new homes in partnership with developers to enhance the portfolio and offer places for people to live, and turning those redundant buildings into spaces for homes, businesses and things. How do we go about finding the right partners and connections out there? So who is it we want to work with in terms of developing these properties?
I think it's probably going to be about shared values. We're fundamentally buying estates because we want to scale conservation. The property part to date has been somewhat secondary to that. It's been about absolutely keeping the
scaling conservation of land.
Manage what we've got, but control that ambition. Whereas I think if we worked with partners, in the development space, in the property space, on shared priorities, what do we want the outcomes to be, then there's a huge amount of latent planning opportunity in that portfolio.
Do you think there's the potential that we'll bring land forward in 24 with a view to new development potentially?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've got one or two gems just sitting there. I
love how your eyes sparkle with that one. Like, yeah, we might just that. Yeah.
We've got permissions sitting there that we could implement if we thought that was the right thing to do for the estate. And I mentioned that on one that has come in very recently. So we're just shaping up the whole master plan and the whole business plan at the moment. But
I was really disciplined and didn't mention that one. When you said about storage space, about the biggest barns you'll ever see, and we need someone out there with exciting ideas of what we could do with it.
Yeah, we've got things that are more or less, shovel ready, but we've also got ones where we think, God, that would be incredible, and we need to be able to spend the time kind of going through it.
Such a balance, isn't it? Because we've had built properties where on first viewing, you or I have thought, oh, this is the solution. And actually, you go back again, you're like, oh, no, maybe it isn't. And I think that's why that patience of a year under ownership, or longer if we can, just allows the landscape and our understanding of it and the social and the environmental and the cultural context to sort of present itself. In the same way we need to listen to the landscape, I think we need to listen to the built property footprint as well, to understand how it fits and works.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, it's such a big investment that you want to know that you've, got the phasing of it right, and that we haven't done something that's then going to make the rest of the operational stuff on the estate more tricky, or isn't the right use or isn't in the right place. So it's that holistic picture, I think.
The other thing about patience for us is because the environmental performance and impact of property technology is improving. It needs to go faster, but it is improving. So if we can buy some more patience and time, because it's the right thing for each estate, the options available to us will develop as well.
Yeah. But I think, part of the attraction for me coming across was our ability to do something a bit different, and to be able to go to a local authority and say, this is what we're doing in the whole. You know, how would you feel about this? Because we think, you know, it speaks to this, and, you know, just try and tie it together rather than to be doing great BNG stuff over there and great carbon stuff here and
some
have the property
developers
in the middle.
say, you know, what's the least I can do?
Yeah, no,
what's the most we
absolutely.
can do to help the environment and bring the property?
You know, we talk about, okay, well, where are building regs going to get us, and what's the local plan requirement, but actually, like, how far can we push that within the realms of it being commercial?
We touched on it briefly before about demand for housing in the rural environment. Across the piece, have we seen strong demand everywhere? People talk about a rural housing crisis. Do you think it's a real thing?
Yeah, of course it is. And I sort of want to say, don't get me started on it.
Go, yeah.
I mean, you know, we've got such a housing crisis in this country, full stop. You know, availability, therefore affordability, you know, condition, the accommodation that we're expecting people to live in. And that is acute in rural areas, you know, and it varies. But the test is, have we got properties to let that we can't let at the moment? No, we haven't. No. You know, and we've got a few that we are redecorating, refurbishing, that have, you know, changed.
Monacle's literally got people moving in tomorrow into a property that was briefly vacant.
You know, so there'll be more coming in 24. But there is huge housing demand, and we're not meeting it through new build. You know, we've got all the demographic pressures, particularly in rural areas. You know, it's...
Hopefully we can do our bit to help a little. So I mentioned environmental performance of properties. In our principles, we've said we'll make our built property more sustainable when it's practically and commercially viable to do so.
Yeah.
You and I have written a piece on the challenges associated with EPC ratings, and they're not perfect.
Yeah.
Why is it so challenging to improve the energy and environmental performance of rural properties, Fee?
Of existing properties.
Yeah.
So our portfolio is absolutely characteristic of rural properties across the country, in that those properties tend to be older. They're semi-detached and detached, which perform worse on EPCs anyway. And, you know, the construction varies enormously. So EPC is a very blunt instrument. You know, you tick off and you get a number of points and you get a scoring. So we can't sort of take an across-the-board approach to that, because each property is different, but also...
And dispersed,
but also because we're operating under 3 separate regimes. So England and Wales are more or less aligned at the moment. The Scottish system is different, so the regs are different, the requirements are different, and also the political will is different. So we keep hearing EPC standards are going to get, you know, the mandated rating will get harder within this period. Okay, we go to move to plan for that. Political will changes and it moves again. So there is you need a level of certainty to be able to make that investment, and that is challenging across the portfolio of older projects, of older properties. But equally, we know that if we wanted to go and build something tomorrow, the performance of it would be so much better because we'd be at current building regs. So we've kind of got to take a view, where can we have the most impact? How far do we push the existing properties? Absolutely, you know, they all need to be compliant, and all of ours are. We've got 2 valid EPC exceptions at the moment, and that's it. The rest of them are all fine. But where we convert, or where we get some new build in future, how far do we want to push ahead of building regs then and make the impact there?
The challenge of delivering the work in a commercially viable way that's cost effective is one part of it, because the amount of investment some of these properties need, the rental you would have to charge to justify them would render them unaffordable to local communities. Worse still, often you might have to displace an existing tenant or family.
Yeah, when is the right time to do it?
And I struggle with morally, how is that better?
Yeah.
How is it better for a family not to have a home when there's one that is compliant, but we'd love to make it better, or to put them in a position where they can't afford to be in their home? So it is catch-22.
Yeah, and you know, people live in the homes the way they do. Like we've said this before, the way that people occupy homes isn't necessarily a reflection of what the EPC rating is. But equally, you know, I haven't had any tenants, I don't think, possibly one tenant approach us to say, can we do X? Everybody else is comfortable in their properties, and actually us coming in and saying, you've got to move out for 3 months because we're going to...
When we know there's nowhere else to go.
And actually then you take the property apart and you find it's not 3 months because you unearth lots of other things that you might want to do while you're there, is very disruptive. So, we've talked about it when there's a break in tenancy, we will do as much as we can then so that the next tenant coming in, doesn't have that.
I think that opportunity thing is so important because it solves two of those problems. It's still incredibly difficult to do it in a cost-effective way. And actually, in a lot of rural locations, really challenging to have access to the tradespeople we need to do it.
Yeah.
I mean,
at that point in time.
Totally. We visited estates whereby when significant work's been done on an estate, 4 or 5 estates we've seen, not just ones that we've purchased, but they said, no, we had to import an entire build team to do it from other parts of the country. So, and we try and work locally as much as possible, but we need those skills to be there and as well to help support that.
Yeah. And I think some of the, the stuff around skills and supply chain for some of the more innovative solutions to energy performance isn't there yet, and it will come now because regulation's pushing it on the new build. So there will hopefully be, lots of good organisations doing work around that. But there's those skills and expertise aren't necessarily there.
No, I agree. Okay, so when estates change ownership, without a shadow of a doubt, the thing that we hear the most about that people are concerned about is that they're going to be evicted.
Yeah.
Whether we say it or not. So where are we on that principle?
Gosh, in terms of giving them some reassurance, well, I think principally we're there, and I'm looking around the room because actually the people in the room are the people who will go out and meet them and are on on the front line saying we're here to talk. But the proof is in the pudding. The tenancies that we haven't continued have either been related to previous employees who are no longer in post or where those posts are no longer required, or where we've literally looked at a property and said we don't think we can let this out because it needs more work done to it, and we're going to have to take that back in hand and get it to a level of compliance. So
and that's literally single digits.
And everybody else I could do with probably having some figures on this, but a very long-term residents.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you're living on an estate that Oxygen Conservation come and look at, it is our intention to say thank you for the contribution you made to that estate, and we hope you have a happy, healthy time on that estate.
Yeah, absolutely. We recognise that those are people's homes, and as I say, they're more embedded in those landscapes at the moment than we are because they've generally been there longer.
Such an amazing source.
They value them possibly in a different way, but we absolutely those if you want to call it intel, but they're like lived experience there, how they know how things function, those
and
local networks.
Exactly that. It's been so useful to finding the most amazing people and contacts and experiences as a result of that.
Yeah. So I suppose, if people are tempted to keep their heads down because they're worried about what the new landlord is like, then I suppose we'd say,
then this is the new landlord.
Don't come and pick up the phone and let's have a conversation about it, because the more we know about the way people are living in their homes, the better, really, in terms of how we can plan to do more of that.
Nice. So it's an incredible piece of work, Fee, summarising what isn't a hugely complicated, geographically dispersed portfolio, 118 buildings, nearly 30,000 acres. Incredible to distill it down to those sort of 12 key points. If we're sat here in 12 months, what do you hope we'll have achieved from a built property perspective?
Oh, in 12 months. I mean, that's no time at all in the length of the development.
I totally say the same thing about the environment of it.
What do I hope we've achieved? I hope that all of the properties that can be let are let. So we've got a few at the moment that we're working on, and as you say, we've got somebody moving in tomorrow into one. But I hope that the portfolio is kind of as occupied and as utilised as it can possibly be. And then once we know we've got housing under control, we can look at those agricultural buildings and say, what do we do with those? Nice.
So occupied, used properly. The only bit I'd add on to that is I'd love to see more people at the ecotourism side of things. So
I think that will inevitably come. I think the offer is so good that will come.
Awesome. Fee, incredible piece of work. So excited we've made such progress on the built property side of things in the very short time you've been here. Thank you very much for your second sharing session.
Well, thank you for having me back.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
So as is so often the case, as soon as we stopped rolling, the conversation kept going with some really exciting bits. So we're coming back for a couple of quick fire questions otherwise. Which is your favourite estate and why?
Oh, I mean, I love Mornicott, but it's so done. Do you know what I mean? But I think I love it because you can see the care and attention, and you can now see people enjoying that. So I think that's what we should aspire to on other estates.
And are you a bit scared of Katie?
I mean, Katie, clearly.
Sure. Yeah, Mornicott is the correct answer. Well, you're here. Okay. In terms of, if you could make one addition from an ecotourism perspective to any estate we've got, straight off the top of your head, what would you add?
I would like to do something a little bit different in the landscape. So we've been looking at what that might mean in terms of innovative accommodation. There, we've been looking at kind of modular stuff,
Knock-in boxes, those. Yeah.
If we're going to use a brand name.
Other boxes are available.
Because I think there's an idea that in a way there's a sort of they're not a temporary structure, but there's something about the way
they sit delicately, don't they? Yeah,
It looks like you put them there, but you could take them away. But say they're such a big statement in a landscape, but also I think we could do them in a way that just tucks them in somewhere. And would be surprising. You would walk through the rainforest, or you'd walk over the moor.
Totally.
It would be gorgeous.
So, which estate?
We would love to do something at Leon, wouldn't we?
Yeah. I think twisted, bespoke tree houses at Leon is my vision there. And everyone's nodding around us. The knock-in box, I think, they just need to be in Invergeldy. That landscape, when it opens up, I can just see it. Although, admittedly, a day doesn't go by without me sending you one of those, right? Like, you should have one of these or one of those.
A good collection of inspiration.
Okay. If you were going to be uber bold and uber ambitious, what is your moonshot that you hope we achieve from a build property perspective?
I think in the short term, I'd love for us to go to a local authority in a protected landscape and say, let us show you why you should let us do something that will push the boundaries on policy a little bit. We know it's easy to just say no when you're in a national park or elsewhere. And I think we could say, look at what we're doing on the estates as a whole, look at our intention, look at how this would sit both with the existing built property and the landscape more generally, and our plans for it to change over time. And for us to be able to convince them that that was appropriate there, because the sum of those parts would be greater than what we are asking for. I think we can do that. I don't think that's a moonshot, but it's having the time to put all of those pieces together and to take them something really compelling.
It's very much a you moonshot. It's a very elegant, perfectly pitched, nuanced moonshot. So I love it. I adore it. My challenge out there, if you are a local authority or a national park in a protected landscape, and you are a place where we have an oxygen conservation property, and you want to do something different, and you want to be bold and ambitious, get in touch. We're open to any form of partnership. You had the invitation. Is there anything else you'd like me to ask you before I wrap up and then you mock me for not asking you the best question?
No, I'm just going to wish you Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you all too. Bye.